we are seeing a lot of these mental health chatbots, right, which are using generative AI. Then obviously, the risk associated with sort of a harmful content being generated out of the application is very, very high, right?
If you were to break down this trustworthiness, and what are those elements that basically we need to look at when we talk about trustworthiness?
Building applications, we use a different set of methodology, prompts, etc.
What frameworks or approaches have you seen emerging to evaluate the safety of generative AI applications? Hey everyone, welcome to AI Connect podcast. We have been covering so far an important topic which is about the application evaluation of generative AI. And so far we looked at two methods which are quality and performance evaluation. Today we will look at risk and safety evaluations. Now, trust and safety are critical across all functions, irrespective of their place in the enterprise value chain. Right from market research to content creation, branding, customer service, all of that requires trust and safety, and that is paramount to business. Let me invite Shiva to talk about more about risk and safety for enterprise generative AI applications evaluations. Shiva, welcome to the Generative AI podcast once again. Let's continue the dialogue where we left off.
Yeah, thank you, Jaydeep. Yeah.
Great. So the first question, with AI becoming more accessible to businesses, there is a lot of talk about risks and safety. What frameworks or approaches have you seen emerging to evaluate the safety of generative AI applications?
Right. So what we have to really understand is a lot of places where generative AI is being used is really being used to supplement what an expert would do or expert would look at. For example, really, let's say, conversing with a customer, reading a research article, summarizing, or creating new content. So all of these have been typically done by experts prior to generative AI getting into the picture. So we have to make sure that some of the outputs that is being generated by these applications which are using generative AI is trusted, is safe enough for the customers or users to use, is not harmful, right? So that's where the risk and safety evaluations come in. And there are several of these frameworks that are coming in now and are continuously evolving. And as I talked about in one of our previous sessions, software testing has been around for a long time. But what has happened is AI applications are new. We have had some other metrics of evaluating AI outputs earlier, but then now we are getting into a more narrative sort of applications which are generating new content, generating new ideas, right? So we need to adopt certain parameters differently to these set of evaluations, but then the rigor of software testing has to be maintained. Right.
Got it. Okay. So let's deep dive a little bit on that topic of testing, right? I'm curious how companies actually test these AI systems.
Correct.
Are there any specific testing methods or any proven framework that is effective for testing generative AI applications?
Right. So one aspect of testing is self-evaluation. So we typically what we do is while building applications, we use a different set of methodology, prompts, etc. And we can actually ask the same model, the LLM or the foundation model that we are using, to evaluate the same output in a different manner, right? So that we cover aspects like violent content, then sexual content, or the IP infringement, right, or any other harmful content. Also, there could be aspects of jailbreak, right? Like, for example, somebody trying to hack these applications through different prompting methods, right? So a lot of it is, from a testing point of view, is also done through a technique called adversarial testing or red teaming, where we are using the frameworks and data which is already there in some of the applications or some of the previous sort of runs of this application to really test out the particular application that you're using. For example, we have leaders, some of the leaders like Google and Microsoft, utilizing their expertise, building some of these foundation models, coming up with frameworks around specific prompt templates for a specific kind of testing, like for example, harmful content or IP violations or even jailbreaks, right? So those are aspects that are covered. And similarly, custom applications can also use the same framework or similar frameworks to test data. You can use models itself to generate synthetic data which can be injected during the testing through promptings, and then test the output of the model using some of the state of the art metrics.
Okay, okay. But look at, I mean, it's interesting, right? There's so much of talk about AI with trustworthiness.
Correct.
And we understand that it is probably part and parcel of growing pain.
Correct.
Now, if you were to, break down this trustworthiness, and what are those elements that basically we need to look at when we talk about trustworthiness?
Correct.
And from a business standpoint, what ideally businesses should look at?
Correct. Yeah. So sometimes, I mean, it depends on the scenario where the application is being used. For example, if it is an internal applications used in the enterprise, for example, maybe to answer queries around HR or any other internal data, then your levels of testing or levels of assessment may be different. If it is in an external application, for example, I mean, let's say if we are seeing a lot of these mental health chatbots, right, which are using generative AI, then obviously, I mean, the risk associated with sort of a harmful content being generated out of the application is very, very high, right? And or even malicious content or even unintendedly harmful content, right? It is very high. The risk associated with generating such content is very high. So you need to undergo a very, very different rigor. And one of the nice frameworks that I came across is something called Trust LLM. It was developed by a consortium of companies trying to kind of bring more structure to the testing process. It has a set of 8 parameters around which they recommend that testing can be done. The parameters are, for example, truthfulness, right? Truthfulness of the application, then safety, right? Then privacy. So any data which sort of gets into the application is private for that conversation, right? It should not be shared with others, right? So, and then there are aspects like harmful content, right? Harmful content. Then robustness of the application across different kind of scenarios, right? And then ethics. So, does the machine perform ethically in a similar manner as a human would do, right? So that's again very important. And then overall, I mean, if you see whether the application is transparent enough, right? So when you want to actually really go down deep into the application, are you able to see what kind of underlying model it uses, whether that underlying model is transparent? Can you really, if an expert wants to really explain how the system works, can they do it, right? So these are like some of the parameters that has come. It was very interesting, comprehensive sort of study, and it is an ongoing, evolving.
Can you refer to that study? Where did you refer?
Yeah, it's called the Trust LLM project.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called the Trust LLM project, and it's if
maybe we can share that.
Yeah, we can share the
in
link.
Our
So
video description link.
Correct.
So that our viewers can actually have a look at that.
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, in the spirit of transparency, they have given all of the data in there is a GitHub link that we can go through, and then there is a paper also that is published. Yeah.
Correct. Now, the application is so vast. There are so many use cases are there.
Exactly.
At a personal level, also at an enterprise level.
Right.
At an internal level for organization and also for the external level as well.
Exactly.
How do you think when you look at risk and safety, the parameters from evaluation standpoint, right? Are there going to be separate parameters that we look at for internal and external, like customer facing or external facing kind of applications?
Yeah. So I think it is important for us to look at, I mean, keeping in mind the costs involved in such testing, all of that, right? So, for example, I mean, aspects like jailbreak may not be applicable for an internal application, because there are other cybersecurity sort of parameters that the organization has deployed, which will take care of some of those aspects, right? So you don't need to actually test the Gen AI application for jailbreaks. But if it is an internal external application, you might want to sort of test it more thoroughly for some of these safety and cybersecurity kind of threats, right? So, and then also the domain matters. I mean, obviously, if it is a medical application, I mean, you want to really make sure that accuracy and safety, harmful content, so, and sort of IP related aspects, these are all tested properly, right? Because that is extremely important in the medical world. Of course, I mean, if it is let's say, for example, an e-commerce discovery application, the level of testing that you will do is probably slightly lower compared to a medical application. So obviously the application context, where it sits within the enterprise, all of that is important. So it is important for an organization or a developer who is actually architecting and developing such applications to distill a lot of the best practices that are evolving and apply that to their own set of applications, right, in a way that it makes sense, right? So that is actually very important. I mean, very similar to what we do in software testing, right? What kind of performance benchmark we set, what kind of vulnerabilities we will test, right? So this is all. So the entire discipline of software testing, which has matured over a period of time, needs to be adopted and tailored to the generative AI applications as well.
Yeah.
Is what I feel.
Yeah. And I think the only additional thing would be is considering generative AI is still an emerging area.
Exactly.
So I think the risk and safety part is one of the most important considerations, especially in the enterprise space.
Exactly.
Especially while dealing with external people, be it the customer or vendor and whatnot.
Yeah.
So the larger players like Google or Microsoft, right?
Right.
Are they in some way sort of pushing this risk and safety as an agenda, or helping establish some of the ground rules for that? Basically, in some way, they're influencing this space.
Yes. Yeah. So what they've done is they have adopted some of the risk and safety frameworks that they have used to develop their own foundation models or applications, and then they've also come up with some sort of best practices and prompt templates and even data and metrics for checking against harmful content or violent content or whatever, right? So and then they've also integrated with their respective cloud services, right? So a developer who is developing an application can directly sort of consume those services or inherit some of those templates that are already there to check their own application for risk and safety. At the same time, I mean, they also have given a very well-defined framework which can be adopted for the custom scenario. So, for example, I mean, Vertex AI as well as Azure AI has a lot of these services which you can inherit and can essentially use for testing your own applications. But the same framework can also be used in a custom manner.
Excellent. Okay. So these are some of the areas I wanted to touch upon, and I think this is a continuum, right? So, as we are speaking through 2025, as the beginning of this series, we have discussed that many generative AI applications are likely to go in production starting 2025. And whether it is quality or application performance evaluation or risk and safety, all three are going to be paramount on the post deployment phase. And with this, we have covered all three. I would highly recommend our viewers to check out our previous two episodes on this topic, so that you will get a holistic idea about the post deployment cycle, what are the different considerations that we have discussed as part of this series.
Absolutely. That's a very important point you brought up, Jaydeep. Yes, I mean, the Gen AI Ops is an important aspect of it, and how do we integrate all of these test cases and test scenarios on an ongoing basis to continuously evaluate the application is very important. It's not just at develop time, but also at runtime and execution time, important for assessment.
And we will continue to discuss this topic as it is at the core of what Prescience is basically be doing, focusing on 2025 onwards and helping our customers with that particular area. So as we learn, as we sort of build more such use cases for by ourselves, we will continue to share with our viewers. So keep coming back and looking for some of those nuggets in the post-deployment space. But for today, we will wrap it up here, and you will see us again in the future episodes touching upon other aspects of enterprise AI applications and adoptions. With that, Shiva, thank you very much for being
Thank you, Jaydeep. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.